Let's start off with to talk about the damage that's being done to our oceans by climate change. What do we need to know about that? Do we each have one? Let's take that one.
Okay. Great, thank you. That's a really big question, and I'm going to give just a bit of the answer. And there are probably a lot of people in this audience who could give much more of it, but I'll just hit some high points. So climate change, most of us think about it in terms of warming, and that has a huge influence on the ocean. And I heard from President Gaffney, Admiral Gaffney, that we're about 1,500 yards from the ocean here. So sea level rise is a big impact because when you warm water, it takes up more space. So half of the sea level rise is just coming from the warming of the ocean. And the entire ocean is warming, not just the surface. The surface is warming more, but the entire ocean is warming. So sea level rise. A second big impact is the impact that that warming has on ecosystems. And part of that, so for organisms that can move around, it affects the water that they're in, and many of them change where they move around. Fisheries. So fisheries tend to move from toward the poles and so a fishery that used to be very important for one state might find that the fish were no longer as prevalent there. Another state is benefiting. So movement. And then for those organisms that can't move, it can change the environment so much that they can no longer be there. So sea level rise, ecosystem impacts. A third piece is that warming the ocean also changes the circulation of the ocean, where the currents are and how strong the currents are. So those are just a couple of pieces that come from warming. And I'll just mention one other that a lot of people have heard about, and this is an indirect effect, not of of climate itself, but of the emissions that we're putting in the atmosphere that cause that warming, and that is the acidification of the ocean. So more CO2 going into the ocean causes the ocean to become a little bit more acid, just as the CO2 that is in your bottle of carbonated beverage makes it a little bit acidic. And that in turn, just that small difference is enough to make it very difficult for some organisms that make skeletal material out of chalk-like material, makes it a little difficult for them to make that. And so it has impacts on that. So there's lots more, but that's a start.